Professor Koh Lian Pin.
Mr. Speaker, sir, please allow me to declare my professional interest as Director of the Center for Nature-Based Climate Solutions at the National University of Singapore and a member of the International Advisory Council of Climate Impact X. Many businesses have shown increasing interest in improving their environmental, social, and governance performance. In particular, they want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in their value chain to meet carbon neutral or net zero emission goals. However, many businesses are also finding it difficult and challenging to completely transition away from fossil fuels by mid-century. Mr. Sunny Verghese, the CEO of Olam, made a telling remark during Temasek's Ecosperity Week in October last year. After speaking to over 200 fellow chief executives who have made net zero commitments, Mr. Verghese realized that most of them may not know how to get there. So while it is important to set ambitious targets for a low-carbon society, it may be even more important to develop and execute the strategies, policies, and actions for us to achieve these goals. That is what this motion is calling for and why I fully support it. Sir, we need to take concrete steps to decarbonize. This will include putting an appropriate price on carbon to internalize the social, economic, environmental, and climate costs of carbon emissions, as my fellow members have highlighted. At the same time, there is growing recognition that carbon offsetting may need to be part of our immediate strategy as we transition to a low-carbon society. What is carbon offsetting? In a nutshell, it is a way for companies or individuals to invest in value-adding environmental projects to balance out their own carbon footprint. Carbon offsetting as a concept may present various technological, political, and ethical conundrums. But insofar as decarbonization remains the top priority and effective guardrails for carbon offsetting are in place, certain types of carbon offsets are not only viable, but may be indispensable for us to meet our climate goals. A carbon offset credit is a tradable certificate or permit that represents the allowance to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide or equivalent greenhouse gas. These carbon credits can be produced from different types of clean technology projects, emissions reduction projects, or carbon capture projects, including both technology-based and nature-based solutions. Nature-based carbon projects are important because they represent low-hanging fruits for us to immediately turn off 1 tap of our carbon emissions by ending deforestation and start to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through reforestation. And that is not all. Nature-based carbon projects such as mangrove conservation and restoration can also deliver many other benefits for local communities and biodiversity that are well aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Sir, as a city-state, Singapore faces the geographical constraint of limited land and coastlines for implementing nature-based projects at scale. But by the same token, we have the good fortune of being geographically situated in a region with bountiful opportunities to work with nature in our fight against climate change. In fact, there are at least 160 million hectares of investable, carbon-rich forests across Southeast Asia that could provide an annual supply of some 400 million tons of nature-based carbon credits if they came under protection as carbon projects. I believe we have the ability and responsibility to work across sectors, nations, and generations to realize these opportunities and to help us transition to a low-carbon society. Perhaps a more pertinent issue is to ensure that carbon offsetting will actually deliver the benefits it promises. Indeed, there are concerns about the lack of transparency in the global carbon marketplace today. in terms of the quality and pricing of carbon credits. This has posed a deterrent to both buyers and producers and created a bottleneck to both the demand and supply of nature-based carbon credits. More importantly, we need to ensure that carbon offsets are not being used for greenwashing to create a veneer of sustainability, as fellow member Associate Professor James Lim pointed out. There is always the risk that some companies or individuals might buy up carbon credits for environmental claims without actually making any effort to reduce their carbon footprint. Therefore, we need to hold to high standards of accountability both the buyers and producers of carbon credits. On the supply side, we need to ensure that carbon projects deliver real, additional, and permanent benefits, not just for climate change mitigation, but also for communities and biodiversity on the ground. On the demand side, we need to ensure that users of carbon credits have in place concrete policies, plans, and actions to transition to a lower carbon economy and are not relying solely on offsetting to reduce their net carbon emissions. In May 2020, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat set up the Emerging Stronger Task Force, led by Minister Desmond Lee and Mr. Tan Chong Meng. The EST convened several alliances for action, which represent a new form of private-public partnership with a strong bias towards action in capturing new opportunities. And capture new opportunities, the EST did indeed. The AFA on sustainability was prescient in anticipating the need for a trusted platform that would provide transparency in carbon trading for businesses to support nature-based carbon projects. This led to the establishment of Climate Impact Acts, a global exchange and marketplace for high-quality carbon credits through a partnership between DBS, SGX, Standard Chartered, and Temasek. Who would have thought that one day Singapore's most important financial institutions, the engines of our economy, will play such an important role in the conservation and restoration of our natural environment? So, we are capable of thinking beyond the dichotomy of economic development versus environmental protection. The tension between these and other societal priorities will likely remain, but this constant tension can be helpful in reminding us that in our transition towards a low-carbon society, no one succeeds until everyone succeeds. Sir, I stand in support of this motion.
Order. I propose to take a break now. I suspend the sitting and will take the chair at 4:25 p.m. Order. Order.